Welcome back to the channel. This was actually inspired by a comment on the full-length glider video, and I felt it necessary to do this as a full topic. What we're going to talk about is setting up cameras and capturing audio inside the airplane, and how legal is it?
This channel is about working on aircraft and flying those airplanes. So come take a seat and let's go for a flight.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Freedom Fixer. And today's topic is going to be setting up cameras on the airplane and some of the considerations that you might want to think about if you're going to do this. So this was actually inspired by a comment from Lavender Cat 175. Hey man, love what you're doing, and I'm starting gliding too. And do you have any camera advice you could give me? And through the comments, this is kind of a lengthy topic, and I felt it necessary to actually do an entire video on this particular topic. And what we're talking about is the placement of cameras and some of the considerations that you might want to go through if you're going to set up cameras on your airplane. First and foremost, forget about cameras when you're flying. Cameras are always secondary. Literally, they are on the bottom of the list. Fly the airplane, communicate, navigate. Do those things first. If you're going to be setting up cameras, take time on the ground, figure out your locations and the setups so that you won't have any issues with them being in your line of vision or them falling off or being a distraction, because that's the last thing you want to do when you have cameras rolling, is worry about, oh, is it, and you fly into the side of a hill or you lose your altitude or airspeed, and that's literally the last thing you want to do. The second thing to consider about putting cameras on your plane is, well, how legal is it? Because I can guarantee you, for a 1969 182, there is nothing in the maintenance manual about adding a camera to the airplane. So, but with the advent of a lot of mobile devices, either for iPads or your phone for using electronic flight bags, a lot of people will use certain mounts on the airplane, either using suction cups or actual clamps. Now, in the eyes of the regulators, a lot of this stuff is not permanently installed in the airplane, and therefore it's considered equipment, like you plugging in a headset. So how legal is it to install these types of devices? There are different rules for different regulations. So, like for example, your headphones. Those are, well, in most cases, the headphones can either be manufactured with a TSO or a technical standard order. What does technical standard order mean?
According to Wikipedia, a technical standard order is a minimum performance standard issued by the United States Federal Aviation Administration for specified materials, parts, processes, and appliances used on civil aircraft.
What she said. So, some headsets can be made to these TSOs, and in the case of 121 operators, the professional pilots have to use TSO type headsets. So, the wireless ones that I have do not have that TSO, so ergo, those cannot be used on 121 operators. However, the rules under 91, which general aviation rules, are a little more lenient and allow for those types of headsets. The same can be said for these mounts and clamps. The reason why they can be used is because they are considered temporary and can be removed at the end of the flight, just like your headsets. Now, with that said, there are certain mounts that I have installed on Daisy here, which are stuck onto the glare shield. So the mounts that I use on the glare shield here on Daisy can actually be installed and removed before and after the flights. And there's no tools that's required. And I think that's a key part to remember when mounting some of these cameras. So as a general rule, when it comes to cameras themselves, if it requires a tool or like a screwdriver to remove and install those cameras, then they're considered actually permanently installed on the airplane, at which time you will need to have some sort of entry into the maintenance log. Now, with the legalities out of the way, we're going to go over some of the process that I go through to kind of develop my view on the airplane. So, for an example, if you get into a brand new airplane, you want to have some time on the ground, not part of any part of the flight operations whatsoever, and give yourself enough time that you can sit down and place the camera in a certain location, hit the record button, and see what the picture is that you're actually going to be getting. This might be time consuming if you don't have a viewer on your camera. You may have to take it and put it on and upload the footage onto a computer to be able to see it. So there's going to be a little bit of time to set up these cameras, take the test shots, and then process them later. So, but what I've done in the past is I will just take the camera running, and I will walk around the airplane and kind of hold it in a place that I think might be a good shot. So I've developed a lot of these views from either past experience flying on different airplanes. So the two views that I have on the glare shield are a very good perspective looking forward and then looking back into the airplane. I do recommend this for initially setting up cameras. Anything external I would definitely shy away from if you don't have a background in securing these types of cameras, or if you don't have the equipment. There are lots of manufacturers out there that make mounts that will hook into the tie downs on the airplane, and those are pretty good for grabbing pictures, especially that one from underneath the tail looking forward. A lot of those are hooked right onto the tie down. And then when the airplane is put to bed for the day, that mount is removed off the airplane. A lot of the times they'll have simple mechanisms to install and remove them, therefore not needing the screwdriver or wrench, and then being really a temporary installation. Another attachment device are these billeted bungs. They work in conjunction with ram mounts and also these Panavice grips. The bung is mounted on a panel or can be substituted from a fairing fastener on the wing, and then your clamp can be attached to it and then hold the camera. Word of caution, this is technically considered a permanent mount, so a logbook entry is advised. Now, I have experimented with installing cameras on the outside of this high-wing Cessna, and I've had very limited success. There are very few hard points on the outside of the airplane, and I would never use the sticky mounts or a suction cup on the outside of the airplane. That is just a deal breaker for me. I would never do that. There's the high probability of you losing a camera, first of all, and then secondly, anything coming off of the airplane, you have no idea what it's going to hit when it gets to the ground. You can still capture really good footage just by having a forward view and a rear view in the airplane. So at those locations, you can use the sticky mounts if you want to really stick them onto a glare shield. Make sure that you have tested that location and you are sure you're going to want to put that sticky mount on your instrument panel glare shield, because they don't come off very easily. Now, you will notice that on Sheila, she does have some exterior shots, and those particular mounts are more than temporarily installed, and I've made logbook entries for those locations. The one that's out on the wing is actually utilizing a factory nut plate in the spar. That is a very solid location, and I have temporarily, permanently installed the mount for the camera, and I use these show and tell time. So on all my exterior cameras, I use these mounts made by Ulanzi. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, but these are about $26 on Amazon, and the great thing about them is they're two-piece, and they have spring-loaded locks on either side. Additionally, you can slide that button forward, and it will lock that from releasing. So this is mounted to that stud on the wing. One side is 1/4 and the other side is 1/4, which is on the camera side. And it is in a fixed location, so I always get the same shot. I just take the camera and lock it into place, and then I can switch that arm, and that will not come out until I unlock it and squeeze both of the tabs together, and then the camera will come off. I feel very confident that this will not depart the airplane. However, something like this, I would never do this on the exterior of the airplane. This is the type of mount that I used on the glider tow. So on the glider ride video, this is the camera I use. I have switched all 4 of my cameras are the DJI Action 3. And the reason I did that was for good reason. I was having severe heartburn with GoPro, and cameras shutting down, and the battery life was crap. So I took advice from Ginger the Plane, and I upgraded all of my cameras to the DJI Actions. And I have special cases on the outside that protect the camera. To get these out, what I end up doing is opening the back, and it's the size of a GoPro. And these have mechanical magnetic mounts. There's 2 indentations on the bottom here which grab into those 2 feet, and that's locked in there. I have tried grabbing this thing, and that, I'm not joking, that is on there. The only way that this will come loose is if these 2 side buttons are pushed, and then it comes right off. So I'm very confident this style of mount will actually work. I'm just a little more hesitant about using this on the outside of the airplane. Just my personal preference. However, on the glider tow, I did use this with the external. And on the case itself, also has these mounts. So what I was able to do is I've taken and modified a RAM mount to take the 1/4 here to an adapter to the DJI mount. So I can turn this in any direction and lock it down. Easy. And what I ended up doing was I just found a flat spot in the canopy, and I did get permission, by the way, to do this. And I attached this using the suction cup to the canopy plexiglass. And this will lock into place. And the cool thing about the DJIs is that even though this was hanging down at kind of a weird angle, there's a horizontal compensation inside the cameras. So a lot of the times you'll see just a slight movement in some of the external cameras on Sheila, and that's because the camera is sensing the motion and trying to adjust for the picture. So that made for a really good hands-off. It was out of the way, and I didn't have to think about the camera. I just turned it on and let it run. Then you fly the airplane. So my philosophy with setting up the cameras before a flight, and I've done all the pre-stuff, you know, I've gone through and I've tested the views, and that's how I keep everything really consistent. But I first, before even doing any pre-flight on the airplane, is I'll set up the cameras and I'll set up the audio recorder, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So I set up the cameras first, and then I do my pre-flight. This is very important because I have a delineation between being a cinematographer and being a pilot. And those two lines never cross. So, with that said, when I do my pre-flight, I check the cameras as a pilot. I don't ever make any kind of considerations about what kind of shots I'm going to get. I don't think about what's happening. I just evaluate the security of those cameras on the airplane, just like you would for any other part of the airplane. And that kind of leads into a problem I have with why I went to the DJI, was because the GoPros that I used to use would time out, and like literally I think I'd get, like, on an average I'd get 25 minutes of footage. And for longer cross countries and other flights, I would have to play this game of, do I turn the cameras on at the beginning of the flight and capture the departure, or do I wait until later and turn them on and go and fly an approach, a second approach, to capture the latter part of the video. And it was always this game of playing back and forth between which shots I want to take. I can run these will last just under an hour. I'd say probably 50 to 55 minutes. And I can get a very decent flight to and from and capture all the audio and video from these cameras. And I didn't sacrifice any quality. These are 4K cameras, and I shoot in 4K. So I could probably extend the life of the batteries and shoot at like 1080p. As an individual, you want to make those types of determinations. My focus is I turn the cameras on before I get in the airplane, and then I completely forget about them. Well, I make sure they're running, but that's about the only consideration. I turn them on, and then I am pilot from then and on out. If you're limited to cameras and you only have one spot, you can use one of these 3D cameras. And since this one came out several years ago, this is the Geomaji older camera. You can get some really great photographs. I know that Bananas uses a 3D camera on his. I think it's maybe the Insta360. That's a great way of capturing a lot of angles around you. Keep in mind that the processing in post for that is extremely high. You're going to have a really good computer. It's going to take a lot of time to pan all of that footage, and processing that 3D or 360, but processing that 360 degree footage is going to take some time. I have the camera, I've shot with the camera, I just don't have the time to process it. So this one primarily stays in the bag unless I feel a desire to use it or need. Lastly, and I briefly talked about this in another video, but I always find it hard to find that video because it kind of was like an intro. So, when it comes to audio that you hear inside the airplane, this is my entire setup. I have what they call a DAR, or a digital audio recorder. This is the DR05, and I also am wearing the light version, the 05L. And you can't quite see the microphone. I use a lavalier mic, and it's hidden upon my person. So, how we get the audio from the panel into the audio recorder without it being really loud, because these have external mics on them, or if you're using the light version, you just need a source going into those. Now, the cables you're going to need are, unless you're going directly into a jack, but if you have a passenger, they probably want to use their headset, so we use a Y cable. And the Y splitter allows you to plug into the airplane, have a jack for somebody's headset, and then a plug that will go to the DAR. That adapter is 1/4 inch to 3.5 millimeter because the top of the DAR is also a 3.5 millimeter. I've also incorporated an attenuator. This helps drop the level of the audio to make it easier for the DAR to process. You can do without this. The quality is a little bit better if you use this 25 dB attenuator. So what we end up doing is that goes to the so that goes to the DAR, and that goes to the jack. Here is the adapter, 3.5 millimeter to quarter, and then quarter into this. I know it's a little bit of a mess, and I would really, maybe I'll come up and develop my own and then sell them on the internet and make $1 million. Crack myself up. Anyway, so that cable gets kind of stowed up around the panel and out of the way. I also have a mount onto the panel, and I use these cold shoe mounts for these. It's basically just a little square block, and it sits right on the panel, so I can actually see the face and make sure, most of the time, that I'm actually recording. There's a little red light here, and if that little red light's not on, steady, you're not recording. Sometimes I'll forget that, and then I get disappointed when I get home and find out I didn't capture that portion of the flight. I do want to mention about these suction cups. Even the clear ones, and especially the ones that are black. If you're in a sunny region, do not leave these suction cups mounted onto plexiglass in direct sunlight for any period of time, because what will happen is the sunlight will heat up the plexiglass because these are dark, and it could potentially get the plexiglass up to a temperature that would turn it into plasticine state of the plexiglass. Basically, these can burn a round circle into your plexiglass. And if you're renting an airplane or you borrow your friend's airplane and you leave a little on the side of the windshield, they're gonna be upset. So be sure to mount these and take them off when you're done with the flight. I haven't really talked about considerations on what type of equipment to use. I just know that for myself, the DJIs will last long enough, the quality is good enough. But if you want to keep using GoPros or any other type of camera, that's going to be your own personal preference, and you're going to have to figure it out on your own. So, but that's a little walkthrough on installing cameras and capturing video for your next adventure in an airplane. So, with that, may all your flying be good flying.